My name is Beth Carter, and I'm 31. A few weeks ago, my mother called me home because my sister needed a kidney. She did not ask how I was. She slid a folder across the kitchen table. A black pen sat on top of it, already uncapped. My mother tapped the folder once and said, "For once, be useful to your real family." I placed both hands in my lap. I did not touch the pen. But here's what my mother didn't know. The hospital match form had marked me as Melissa's closest listed family match. That is the reason I'm sitting here telling you this. Not because I wanted a fight. Not because I wanted a mother to lose in front of her own family. I am telling you, because some lies do not fall apart until the person they were built on stops holding them up. The folder was supposed to make me obedient. Instead, it made my mother's oldest story start showing dates, signatures, names, and times. If you know what it feels like to be called ungrateful by people who only remember you when they are cornered, stay with me. Like this story and subscribe if you believe a quiet boundary can still shut a door. Tell me where you're listening from, and whether you have ever had to protect yourself from your own family. Let me take you back to the first time my mother called me the hospital's mistake, because that sentence did not begin at the kitchen table a few weeks ago. It began in the Carter house, long before I understood that a mother could hand a child a name and use it like a leash. I was 7 when I first heard the story told like it belonged to everyone but me. We were at the kitchen table on a Sunday night, and my mother, Diane Carter, was cutting a roast into 4 neat portions. My father got the first piece. My sister, Melissa, got the second. My mother gave herself the third. Then she looked at the small piece left near the edge of the plate and set it in front of me. Melissa was 9 then. She asked why my baby picture looked different from hers, and my mother did not lower her voice. She said, "Beth came home with us after the hospital fixed a mistake." Then she smiled at Melissa, soft and proud, and added, "Real family comes first." I did not know what that meant. I only knew everyone kept eating. That was the Carter house. Nothing terrible had to happen loudly. A chair could stay pushed in. A napkin could stay folded. A child could be corrected with the same voice my mother used to ask for salt. The wound came wrapped in manners. And in our family, manners made it harder to point at the wound. My mother was good at being admired. She remembered birthdays at church. She brought casseroles when a neighbor had surgery. She wrote thank you cards on cream paper with her initials pressed at the top. People called her generous. They did not see the way generosity stopped at our own front door, right where I stood. Beth was not starved. Beth was not locked out. Beth had shoes, school supplies, and a bed made every morning. But I was raised like a guest who had stayed too long. Melissa had a baby book with pink ribbon tied through the spine. Mine was a plain envelope in the hall closet. Melissa's first word was written down. Melissa's first haircut was saved in wax paper. My envelope held 2 hospital bands, 1 blurry photo, and a note in my mother's handwriting that said, "Ask records if needed." I asked once. I was 10. My mother took the envelope from my hands so quickly the paper bent. She said I was too young to understand grown-up problems. Then she put it on the highest shelf and told me to help Melissa set the table. At birthdays, the difference got dressed up as tradition. Melissa got the story of the night she was born. My father talked about racing through rain and forgetting the overnight bag. My mother laughed and touched Melissa's cheek. When my birthday came, my mother ordered a sheet cake from Kroger and said, "We got you after a confusing morning." She said it like a joke. Nobody laughed first. They waited for her. Then they followed. When I was 12, we took a family photo in front of the maple tree. My mother placed Melissa between herself and my father. She put me on the outside, next to the mailbox. The photographer told us to squeeze closer. My mother said, "This is fine." In the print, there was a small strip of daylight between my arm and hers. I remember that strip better than I remember my dress. The worst part was not one big cruelty. It was the clean routine of it. Melissa got the inside seat at restaurants. Melissa got the first call when plans changed. Melissa got our girl. I got Beth. Just Beth. My name sounded like a label on a storage bin. When I got sick in 8th grade, I called my mother from the school office. My voice was rough. The secretary said I had a fever. My mother arrived 40 minutes later because she had been picking up Melissa's dance costume. In the car, she handed me a bottle of water and told me not to breathe toward Melissa's garment bag. "She has pictures tomorrow," she said. The costume rode in the front seat. I rode in the back. My sister was protected from inconvenience. I was expected to be grateful for transportation. The only person who never used the hospital story as a handle was my Aunt May. She was my mother's older sister, though the two of them never seemed made from the same childhood. Aunt May wore cardigans with loose buttons and kept peppermint candies in her purse. She never corrected my mother in front of everyone. She did something quieter. She saw me. When I cleared dishes, Aunt May dried them beside me. When I sat at the edge of a room, she made space on the couch. When my mother said, "Real family comes first," Aunt May would look at me long enough for me to know she had heard the blade inside it. One afternoon, when I was 15, Aunt May drove me to the library after my mother forgot. She did not apologize for Diane. That would have been easy and useless. She parked under the sycamore tree, turned off the engine, and reached into the back seat. She handed me a small blue box with a rubber band around it and said, "Keep anything with your name on it." Inside were two things. One was a newborn photo of me, with a wrinkled red face and one fist near my mouth. The other was a sealed hospital envelope with my full name written across the front. I asked her what it was. She said, "Something your mother should have explained better." I wanted to open it right there. Aunt May touched the top of the box and shook her head. "Not because you are not ready," she said. "Because once you know some things, you cannot unknow them. Wait until you have a safe place to stand." For years, I thought that meant money. Then I thought it meant an apartment. Later, I understood she meant a self, so I built one. I left for community college at 18 with 2 suitcases, a used laptop, and the blue box tucked inside a laundry bag. My mother cried at the curb because neighbors were watching. She hugged Melissa with both arms. She patted my shoulder with one hand and told me not to make the family look bad. My father paid for gas and said little. Silence was his favorite way to stay married. College was not freedom all at once. It was a room where nobody knew the old story unless I told it. I worked in the campus bookstore. I learned which bills could wait and which could not. I learned how to cook rice without burning the bottom of the pot. I learned that a quiet apartment could be peaceful, not punishment. Diane still called before holidays. She did not ask me to come home. She told me when dinner started, as if I were a neighbor who might stop by if traffic was light. At Thanksgiving, she introduced Melissa to guests as, "My daughter Melissa." Then she turned toward me and said, "And this is Beth." She did not say daughter. She did not have to. The gap did the work for her. I stopped chasing the missing word. That surprised me. It did not stop hurting, but it stopped deciding my day. Aunt May stayed in my life. She mailed grocery gift cards when I pretended I did not need them. She sent birthday cards with $5 inside and a note written in blue ink. She never wrote long messages. She did not need to. One year she wrote, "You are not extra." I kept that card in my wallet until the fold split. By the time I was 26, I had a steady job doing intake work for a community clinic. It was not glamorous. It was useful. I checked names, dates, forms, signatures, emergency contacts. All the small details people get wrong when they are scared or rushed. I learned that paperwork was not cold when it protected the right person. A wrong box could follow someone for years. A corrected line could give someone their life back. That became the closest thing I had to armor. When Aunt May got too tired to drive, I visited her on Saturdays. She lived in a small apartment with lace curtains and a television that was always too loud. She kept the blue box on a shelf near her sewing basket whenever I brought it with me. One afternoon, she asked if I had opened the hospital envelope yet. I told her no. She nodded like she had expected that and said, "Then keep it close. Your mother tells stories like she owns the ending." 2 months later, Aunt May moved into assisted living. She gave me a grocery bag with her old recipe cards, 3 photo envelopes, and the peppermint tin from her purse. At the bottom was a second rubber band. It fit around the blue box. I do not know why that made me cry in the parking lot, but it did. Maybe because Aunt May never had to announce she loved me. She left proof where my hands could find it. Then the phone call came. It was a Tuesday evening, almost 7. I had just taken off my work shoes. Diane's name appeared on my phone, and for a second I thought someone had died. She had not called me directly in 6 months. When I answered, she did not say hello. She said Melissa was sick. She said the doctors needed family members tested. She said everyone had to do their part. Her voice had that church lobby softness in it, the one she used when she wanted to sound brave for an audience that was not there. Then she said, "Real family comes first." I stood in my kitchen, with one shoe still in my hand. "Then why are you calling me?" I asked. The line went quiet. It was not a long silence. It was just long enough to show me she had not expected the question. Then my mother sighed, like I had made her explain a chore to a difficult child. "Beth," she said, "this is not the time to be dramatic." I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, because after most of my life telling me I was not quite hers, my mother had called me dramatic for noticing. She told me to come home that weekend. She said there were forms. She said Melissa needed calm. She said I should not upset her. Diane did not ask whether I was scared. She did not ask whether I wanted to talk to Melissa first. She did not even ask whether I could get time off work. She spoke as if my life had been sitting in a drawer, waiting for her to pull it open. I told her I would come. Then I hung up and took the blue box from the top of my closet. The rubber band snapped when I pulled it loose. The hospital envelope slid into my hand. My name was still there, written in ink that had faded at the edges but had not disappeared. For the first time I opened it. The envelope did not give me an answer. Not yet. It gave me a number. There was a copy of an old hospital band, a faded intake slip, and a carbon page with my name typed slightly crooked. At the bottom, someone had written a record number in blue pen. Aunt May had circled it twice. Under the circle, in her small slanted handwriting, she had written one sentence: "Ask for the corrected page." I sat at my kitchen table for a long time with that paper under my palm. I did not feel brave. I felt tired in a very old way. But I also knew the difference between pain and information. Pain had kept me quiet for years. Information could move. The next morning, I went to the clinic early and used my break to call the hospital records office. I gave them my full name, my date of birth, and the record number Aunt May had saved. The woman on the phone asked why I needed a corrected newborn page from 31 years ago. I said, "Because my family has been using the wrong story." She did not laugh. She did not ask me to explain my mother. That was a mercy. 2 days later, I drove to the hospital for the family testing Diane had demanded. I went alone. Diane had offered to pick me up, which meant she wanted to sit beside me, hold the clipboard, and decide which parts of my own body belonged to her sentence. I told her I had it handled. She sent back one line: "Real family comes first." I did not answer. At the hospital, the waiting room smelled like hand sanitizer and old coffee. A little boy kicked the leg of his chair. A woman at the front desk asked for my ID, and when I handed it over, she said my name out loud like it was ordinary. Beth Carter. No pause. No raised eyebrow. No old family joke attached to it. That small thing steadied me. The test itself was simple on the outside. A form, a room, a nurse who called me ma'am. I will not pretend I understood every box on the page. I did understand the line that mattered. Under family match notes, my name was marked as Melissa's closest listed family match. Beth Carter. Closest family match. Not outsider. Not mistake. Not the extra chair at the table. I stared at it long enough for the nurse to ask if I needed a minute. I said yes. She stepped out. I took a photo of the page with my phone. Then I put the paper flat on the desk and read my own name again. For more than 20 years, Diane had made me sound like an extra chair. The hospital had placed me in the family line. I did not call my mother. That would have given her time to turn the room before I reached it. I went home, scanned the form, saved it, and wrote down the date and Diane's exact words from the phone. I did it the way I did intake work at the clinic. Clean, boring, and impossible to twist. A loud person can be dismissed as emotional. A dated page is harder to wave away. That afternoon, Diane texted again. She wanted to know if I had done my part. Those were her words. Not, "How are you?" Not, "Did it hurt?" Not, "Do you need anything?" Just a progress check on the daughter she did not claim unless my blood could be useful. I typed. I completed the appointment. Then I stopped. She replied in less than a minute. Good. Melissa needs calm. Please don't make this about old feelings. Old feelings. That was what she called a lifetime of being placed outside the circle. I did not take the bait. I sent nothing else. Later that night, Melissa texted me from a number I had not seen in months. I almost did not open it. I expected another version of Diane, softened by illness and wrapped in guilt. Instead, the message was only 6 words. Did Mom pressure you into this? I stood in the hallway outside my bedroom and read it twice. The question did not fix anything. It did not erase all the years Melissa accepted, the better chair, the better story, the better name. But it was the first time she had asked about the hand pressing on my back, instead of asking why I had not moved faster. I wrote back. She tried. 3 dots appeared. They disappeared. They appeared again. Then Melissa wrote, I'm sorry. It was not enough. It was also not nothing. That is how a lot of late truth arrives. Too small to heal you. Too real to ignore. The corrected page arrived 3 days later in a plain white envelope. I almost missed it because it came with a grocery flyer and a bill from the electric company. The truth in my family had never arrived with music. It arrived between coupons. Inside was one sheet. At the top was the hospital name. Halfway down was my name. Below it was a line that said the initial newborn identification error had been corrected before discharge. At the bottom was a parent acknowledgement. Diane Carter had signed it. I touched the signature with one finger. There are moments when a whole childhood does not make sense. Then there are moments when it makes too much sense. My mother had not repeated the hospital story because she believed it. She repeated it because it worked. The page did not tell me why. It did not need to. It told me she knew. I called the records office back and asked who had released the page. That was how I heard the name Elena Alvarez for the first time. She had worked in records years ago, and now helped process older birth file requests a few days a week. When she called me after lunch, her voice was careful. Miss Carter, she said, before I answer anything else, can I ask whether your mother ever told you a correction was issued before you went home? I looked at the blue box on my table. No, I said. Elena was quiet for one breath. Then I think you should not go to any family meeting without a copy. She did not make herself the hero of my story. She did not promise to save me. She simply handed me a fact and let me decide what kind of woman I was going to be while holding it. By then, Diane had started building her own stage. A group text appeared that Friday afternoon. It had 12 people in it. Cousins. An uncle I had not seen since Christmas. 2 women from Diane's prayer circle, who somehow counted as family whenever Diane needed witnesses. The message said Melissa needed support. Diane was bringing the family together, and I had agreed to help. I read that last line twice. Agreed to help. Not agreed to be tested. Not agreed to discuss next steps. Help. It was a small word with a leash inside it. Melissa texted me separately again that night. She told everyone you volunteered. I sat down before I answered. That one sentence did something the hospital form had not done. It showed me Melissa could finally see Diane's hand moving in the room. I didn't, I wrote. I know, Melissa answered. 2 words. I stared at them longer than I should have. Maybe because Melissa had spent our whole childhood being handed certainty while I was handed explanations. Hearing her say I know, on my side of anything felt strange. Not warm yet. Not safe yet. Just strange enough to matter. The next morning, I learned about the Care Fund. A cousin forwarded me a post Diane had made online. It showed a photo of Melissa from before she got sick, smiling in a blue sweater, and a caption about family sacrifice. Diane wrote that she was managing donations and coordinating care, because real family comes first. Below the post, people praised her strength. They called her a devoted mother. They said Melissa was lucky. One woman wrote, "You have always held your girls together." I looked at the word girls for a long time. Diane had spent most of my life making sure I did not fit inside that word. Now she was using the idea of me to make herself look whole. The fund was not small. By that afternoon, it had climbed past $14,000. Diane had listed herself as organizer. She had written that every dollar would go through her. She had also written that the family was united. This was what she had put in her own hands. Not just sympathy. A position. I printed the post, the donation page, and the group text. Then I put all of it in a folder of my own. Mine was not fancy. It was gray, bought in a pack of 5 from the dollar store. I wrote one word on the tab: records. On Sunday, Diane called to confirm the family meeting. She said it would be at her house on Tuesday evening. She said Elena from the hospital would be there to explain the next step, because Diane had asked for someone who could speak clearly to everyone. She sounded proud of that. She thought a hospital person in the room would make me smaller. I almost told her Elena had already called me. I did not. Diane kept talking. She said I should dress appropriately. She said Melissa could not handle tension. She said no one wanted drama. Then she lowered her voice and said, "Beth, for once, do not embarrass this family." I looked at the gray folder on my table. I looked at the blue box beside it. Aunt May's rubber band sat snapped in two near my coffee mug. "I'll be there," I said. After we hung up, I called Elena. I asked whether she was really coming. She said yes. Her tone changed when I told her Diane had invited her. It was not surprise exactly. It was the sound of a woman hearing a lock click from the inside. "Bring your copy," Elena said. "I have it." Then she paused and said, "Miss Carter, let your mother answer first." That was when I understood the shape of the room waiting for me. Diane had built it to corner me. She had invited the witnesses. She had brought in the hospital. She had placed Melissa's need in the center and expected me to become a signature with legs. But she had forgotten one thing. A story only belongs to the person who can still control the first question. I spent Monday evening making copies. One for me. One for Elena. One for Melissa if she wanted it. I did not rehearse a speech. Speeches give people places to interrupt. I wrote 3 questions on an index card and put it in my pocket. Is that your signature? When did you receive the correction? Why did you keep calling me a mistake? The 3rd question was not for the room. It was for me. I knew I might never get an answer. I carried it anyway. Before I went to bed, I opened Aunt May's blue box one more time. The newborn photo was still on top. My face was red and wrinkled, one fist near my mouth. I did not look like a mistake. I looked like a baby waiting for the grown-ups to tell the truth. I put the photo back. I closed the box. Then I placed it beside the gray folder. For the first time in my life, I was going back to my mother's house with my name in my own hands. Tuesday came with rain. Not dramatic rain, just a steady Ohio drizzle that made the roads shine and turned every porch light into a blur. I drove to my mother's house with the gray folder on the passenger seat, and Aunt May's blue box tucked in my tote bag. I did not play music. I did not call anyone. I needed the quiet to stay quiet. Diane's driveway was already full when I arrived. If she had wanted a private conversation, she would have left the house empty. If she had wanted to ask, she would have met me alone. But there were 6 cars outside, and through the front window I could see movement in the living room. My mother had not called a meeting. She had built a room. I sat in the car for 1 minute. My phone buzzed. It was Diane. "We're all waiting." I looked at those 3 words and almost smiled. Not because I was pleased. Because my mother still thought waiting belonged to her. She had made me wait years for a place in that family. Now she could wait 60 seconds while I gathered myself. I put my phone in my coat pocket. I picked up the folder. Then I went inside. The house smelled like coffee and lemon cleaner. Diane always cleaned before an audience. My Uncle Ray sat in my father's old recliner. 2 cousins stood near the fireplace. The women from my mother's prayer circle were on the couch with paper cups in their hands, pretending not to look at me too quickly. Melissa sat at the end of the dining table with a blanket over her knees. She looked smaller than I remembered, but her eyes were clear. Her wrist had a hospital band on it. Not the old kind from my blue box, a new one, white plastic. Her name printed in black. I noticed it because my whole life had been bent around what a hospital once put on a wrist. Diane stood beside her like a guard at a museum and said, "Beth, good, we can begin." Not hello, not thank you for coming, begin. Elena Alvarez was there too, standing near the sideboard with a slim folder against her chest. She gave me one small nod. No rescue. No performance. Just a sign that I had not imagined the phone call. Clipped to her folder was a small card that said Patient Advocate. Before anyone sat, she placed it near Melissa's cup like an ordinary piece of paper. Melissa noticed it. Diane did too. Diane had placed 12 chairs around the dining table. 12. She had also set out a stack of forms, a box of tissues, and a black pen in the center like a little weapon. Next to the forms was a printed page from the Care Fund. The total had grown to $23,000. $23,000, and Diane's name was still at the top. My mother clapped her hands once, soft enough to pass for grace. "Thank you all for coming," she said. "Melissa needs calm support right now, and I will not have old resentments interfere with family responsibility." Old resentments. There it was again. A smaller box for a larger truth. She looked at me when she said it. I did not sit yet. I took the empty chair across from Melissa, placed my folder on my lap, and kept both hands on top of it. Diane noticed. Her eyes dropped to the tab. Records. Then she looked away as if the word had been rude first. "My cousin asked if we should pray." Diane said yes, quickly. She bowed her head and thanked God for family, sacrifice, and unity. I kept my eyes open. Melissa did too. Across the table, my sister watched me like she had finally realized there were two stories in the room. After the prayer, Diane turned to Elena. "Miss Alvarez is here to explain what Beth needs to sign so we can keep things moving." Elena did not move. "I'm here to answer questions about records and process," she said. Diane's smile tightened. "Of course, process." Then she picked up the top form and slid it across the table toward me. The paper stopped near my hand. The pen followed. She set it down carefully, already uncapped, just like she had in the kitchen weeks earlier. "There," she said. "This part is simple." Simple. That word did more work than it deserved. It was supposed to make me feel childish for hesitating. It was supposed to make the room impatient with me before I spoke. Diane had always been good at that. She could put a mood into a room and make everyone else think they had brought it with them. I looked at Melissa first. "Did you ask Mom to call me?" Melissa's fingers tightened around the edge of her blanket. The hospital band shifted against her wrist. "No," she said. Diane cut in before the word could settle. "Melissa does not need to manage details." I nodded. "That's not what I asked." A small sound moved through the room. Not a gasp. Just breath changing direction. Melissa looked at her mother. Then she looked back at me. "I asked what my options were," she said. "Mom said she would handle the family." The family. I let that sit there. Diane reached for the pen and pushed it closer to me. "Beth, no one is asking you to decide everything tonight. We need your cooperation so the doctors can continue. Melissa cannot afford delay." There it was. The clock. Not a literal clock on the wall, though there was one above the china cabinet, ticking like it had been hired. The real clock was Melissa's body. The forms on the table. The $23,000 online. The 12 people watching. The word delay being placed in my lap like blame. My mother knew exactly what she was doing. She was not asking me to help. She was making me responsible for what happened if I paused. Melissa looked down at the patient advocate card near her cup. She did not pick it up yet. Diane saw her looking and moved the tissue box closer to her, as if softness could cover a choice. If I signed without questions, Diane kept control. If I refused, Diane got to call me selfish. If I cried, she got to call me unstable. If I shouted, she got to say she had been right about me all along. So I did none of those things. I placed my hand on the folder and looked around the table. Not long. Just enough to see the witnesses Diane had invited for herself. My mother had brought the room I needed. Comment the word boundary if you have ever watched someone turn pressure into a family duty. Stay with me, because my mother was about to hear from the one place she had trusted to stay buried. I turned back to Diane and said, "You keep saying family. Before I sign anything, I want you to say what you mean by that." Diane blinked once. "This is not the time," I said. "It seems like exactly the time." Uncle Ray shifted in the recliner. One of the prayer circle women looked down into her coffee. Diane heard the room moving away from her, just an inch. She moved faster. "Beth," she said, using the careful voice she saved for public correction. "Do not do this to Melissa." I kept my voice level. "I'm asking one question," she said. "You are making this about yourself." I said, "No. I'm asking whether I am family." The clock ticked above the china cabinet. Melissa did not look away from me. Diane's face changed. Not much. The change was in the corners of her mouth, the little downward pull that meant she had decided kindness had failed and discipline was next. "You know the history," she said. I said, "I want you to say it." She gave a small laugh. That hurt more than if she had snapped. It told the room I was being unreasonable before she had to prove it. "You were part of a hospital confusion," she said. "We took care of you. We raised you. We did more than many people would have done." Melissa's lips parted. I waited. Diane mistook that waiting for weakness. She picked up the pen again and held it out to me across the table. For once, be useful to your real family. There it was. Same sentence. New room. This time, there were witnesses. This time, Melissa heard it without a hallway between us. This time, Elena stood 10 feet away with her folder against her chest. This time, Diane had said the quiet part under her own roof, in front of the very people she had gathered to admire her. I did not take the pen. I looked at Melissa and asked, "Is that what you believe?" Diane's hand froze in the air. Melissa swallowed. Her fingers moved over the blanket once, like she was smoothing a wrinkle that was not there. "No," she said. Diane turned toward her. "Sweetheart, you're tired." Melissa shook her head. "No." It was not loud. It did not need to be. The second no landed harder than the first, because it belonged only to Melissa. I opened my folder then, slowly, not for drama, for steadiness. Diane saw the top page and leaned forward. "What is that?" she asked. I did not answer her. I took out one sheet and kept the rest covered. Then I turned back to my sister and said, "Melissa, do you want the truth before I sign anything?" The room held its breath in small human ways. A paper cup bent in someone's hand. My uncle stopped rocking in the recliner. Elena lowered her folder to her side. Melissa looked at me. Then she looked at our mother. "Yes," she said. "I do." I turned the first page around and laid it flat between us. No speech, no shaking hands, just paper on wood. The hospital match form sat in the middle of my mother's dining table, under the light fixture she polished before every holiday. My name was on the page. Melissa's name was there too. I did not point to either one at first. I let the room look for itself, because sometimes the cleanest truth is the one nobody is invited to decorate. Diane stared at the form. Then she smiled. It was not a real smile. It was the little public smile she used when a cashier overcharged her, and she wanted everyone behind her to know she was being patient with incompetence. "Beth," she said, "medical paperwork is complicated. This is exactly why I asked Miss Alvarez to come." Elena did not step forward. I took out the second page. The corrected newborn record was thinner than the match form. Older, softer at the corners. I had made a copy, but I could still see the age in it. My name sat near the top. Diane's name sat near the bottom. I placed it beside the match form, and my mother's smile went away. I put one finger near the signature line. "Not on it. Near it." "Is that your signature?" I asked. Diane looked at the page. Then she looked at Elena. Then she looked at Melissa. Her hand moved toward the water glass beside her plate, but she stopped before she touched it. "Beth," she said, "this is not appropriate." I kept my voice even. "Is that your signature?" She did not answer. The clock above the china cabinet ticked once. Melissa leaned forward. The blanket slipped from one knee. One of my cousins stopped holding her phone up and lowered it to her lap. Uncle Ray's hand closed around the arm of the recliner. I asked the second question. "Did you receive this correction before I came home from the hospital?" Diane's mouth opened. Nothing came out. For the first time I could remember, my mother had no sentence ready. Not angry. Not grieving. Empty-handed. Elena stepped closer then, but only one step. "The record shows the identification error was corrected before discharge," she said. "The parent acknowledgement was signed at the time." My mother turned toward her. "You cannot just say things like that in my home." Elena's face did not change. "I am not saying anything beyond the record. No lecture. No big courtroom line. Just the record, sitting there where everyone could see it." Diane reached for the corrected page. I placed my palm on it first and said, "Don't." One word. Low enough that I almost did not recognize my own voice. Her hand froze above the paper. The room changed shape around that word. The prayer circle woman nearest the couch pressed a tissue to her mouth. My cousin's eyes moved from the page to Diane, then back again. Uncle Ray stood up halfway, then sat back down as if his knees had changed their mind. But Melissa was the one I watched. She pulled the blanket off her lap, slowly. Her fingers were thin, but they did not tremble. She reached across the table and touched the corrected newborn record. Not the match form. Not the paper about what my body might do for hers. She touched the old page with both our names tied to the same mother. "Mom," Melissa said. "You knew?" Diane turned to her too fast. Sweetheart, you are exhausted. This is being twisted. Melissa did not look exhausted in that moment. Pale, yes. Tired, yes. But not confused. You told me Beth was a hospital mistake, she said. Diane's voice sharpened. I told you what you needed to understand. Melissa flinched. It was small. Her shoulder lifted once, then dropped. That tiny movement did more damage to Diane than anything I could have said. I did not fill the silence. I had spent too many years filling silences my mother created. This one belonged to her. Melissa looked down at the corrected page again. Then she slid her hand across it until her fingers rested beside my name. Beth is my sister, Melissa said. No one moved. That was the blow. Not the form. Not the signature. Not Elena. My mother had built her whole room around the phrase real family, and the daughter she had placed at the center had just handed that word back to me. Diane's face changed in pieces. Her eyes hardened first, then her mouth pulled thin, then something lower in her face loosened. The part that knew the room had heard too much to be managed. Melissa, she whispered, please. Melissa shook her head once. She picked up the black pen Diane had placed in the middle of the table. For a second, I thought she was going to push it toward me. Instead, she pulled one of the hospital contact forms from the stack and turned it toward herself. Then she picked up the patient advocate card Elena had placed near her cup. Elena, she said, can I change who speaks for me? Diane snapped. No. Elena answered Melissa, not Diane. Yes, if you are choosing that yourself, Melissa said. I am. The pen made a hard sound when she clicked it open. That sound went through the room sharper than a shout. Diane moved toward her chair. You are not thinking clearly. Melissa looked up. I am thinking clearly for the first time in weeks. Then she wrote. Not a paragraph, not a speech, a name, a signature, a date. She removed Diane as the person the hospital should call first. Elena checked the line, nodded once, and placed the page in her own folder. Diane stared at the folder like it had swallowed something of hers. It had. The Care Fund page was still on the table. Diane's name printed above the total. Melissa picked up her phone with both hands. She did not pretend she controlled Diane's page. She did something worse for Diane. She opened her own account, typed slowly, and posted where everyone at that table could see. Please do not donate through my mother's page. I am changing how my care expenses are handled. I will share a verified update myself. Diane's voice cracked on the first word. Melissa. Melissa set the phone down with the screen facing up and said, no. A minute earlier, the donation page had made Diane look necessary. Now Melissa's message told everyone exactly what Diane had been holding. Not care. Access. Not sacrifice. Control. A paper cup bent in someone's hand. Coffee spotted the white tablecloth. One of the prayer circle women stood as if she meant to help, then sat back down because she did not know who needed helping anymore. My mother looked at me then. Really looked. Not the way she looked when she wanted a signature. Not the way she looked when she wanted a problem to become quiet. She looked at me like she had just discovered I had been present in every year she had tried to edit me out of. I could have said many things. I could have asked why. I could have asked whether it had been easy to make a little girl carry a lie so a grown woman could feel noble. I could have read every line of that corrected page out loud. I could have made the room sit in all of it. I did not. I took the uncapped black pen from the table, put the cap back on, and set it beside Diane's hand. I'm not signing anything tonight, I said. And if I choose to continue testing, no one in this room will hear it from my mother first. Diane's hand lay flat on the table. Her fingers did not move. Melissa looked at me. There were tears in her eyes now, but she did not reach for me. I was grateful for that. Some distances deserve to be crossed slowly, not because they are small, but because they are real. Elena closed her folder and said, "That is enough for tonight." It was. I gathered the match form, the corrected newborn record, and Aunt May's blue box. I put the 2 pages back inside my gray folder. The blue box went on top of it, small and worn, and finally heavier than my mother's story. At the door, Diane said my name. Beth. I stopped, but I did not turn all the way around. For once, my name sounded like something she could not make smaller. Behind me, Melissa said. Let her go, Mom. And my mother did. The next morning, nobody in the Carter family group text knew what to say. Usually, my mother filled silence before anyone else could notice it. She sent updates. She explained people to themselves. She turned every uncomfortable thing into a small paragraph with a heart at the end. But after that Tuesday night, the group text stayed still until almost noon. Then Melissa sent one message. I have changed my hospital contact. Please do not call Beth about medical decisions. I will speak for myself. I am also replacing Mom's donation page with a verified care account and posted receipts. No one argued in the thread. By Friday, the old donation page was frozen, and a new verified care account had replaced it. The organizer was not my mother. The updates were plain, almost boring. Receipts would be posted for care expenses. Questions would go through Melissa or the patient advocate's office. It was not dramatic. It was not a punishment speech. It was a line of text on a screen, but it took something from Diane she had held with both hands. She lost the center. For years, my mother had been the person who told everyone what our family meant. She decided who counted. She decided which story got repeated. She decided which facts were too old, too complicated, or too inconvenient to bring up at a table. After the corrected record came out, she could still talk. She just could not make people forget what they had seen. My Uncle Ray called me 2 days later. He did not apologize for everything. Men like him rarely carry a whole sentence when a half one might get them through the door. He said, I should have asked more questions. I said, yes. That was all I gave him. One of the women from my mother's prayer circle mailed me a card with a Bible verse on the front and no message inside. I threw the envelope away and kept the blank card for grocery lists. That may sound petty. It was practical. I had spent enough of my life being asked to turn other people's silence into something holy. Melissa called on Sunday. I let it ring twice before I answered. Not to punish her. I needed 2 rings to remember I was allowed to choose. Her voice was weak, but clear. I don't know how to do this, she said. I asked, do what? She said, be your sister without pretending I was good at it. I sat down on the edge of my bed. Aunt May's blue box was on the nightstand. The gray folder was beside it, closed. You don't have to be good at it today, I said. She cried then. I could hear her trying not to. Melissa had learned from Diane too. She had learned that needing care made you valuable, but needing truth made you difficult. I believed her, she said. I said, I know. She said, I should have asked. I said, yes. She took that answer. I respected her for it. She did not ask me to make it softer. She did not ask me to say it was fine. It was not fine. A thing can be understandable and still leave damage. We talked for 11 minutes. I know because after we hung up, I looked at the call time. 11 minutes was not a reunion. It was a beginning with guardrails. She asked if I was still willing to continue testing. I told her I would make that decision with my own doctor and the hospital, not with a family circle around a dining table. She said, okay. That word mattered. Not because it fixed us. Because it did not try to own me. My mother waited 12 days before she came to my apartment. I saw her car from the window. She parked crooked near the curb and sat with both hands on the steering wheel. For a moment she looked old. Not gentle, just old. That is an important difference. I did not open the door until she knocked. She stood in the hallway wearing a beige coat and the same pearl earrings she wore to church. She held no folder, no pen, no casserole. Diane Carter had arrived without props, and she looked underdressed for herself. Beth, she said, can I come in? I said, no. The word landed cleanly. I did not say it loudly. I did not add a reason. I had learned that a reason can become a handle in the wrong person's hand. Her face tightened. I am trying to apologize, I said. You can apologize from there. She looked past my shoulder, as if my living room might vote for her. It did not. I did what I thought was best, she said. There it was, not an apology. A pillow laid over a fact. For who? I asked. She blinked. It was the only question I gave her. My mother's mouth moved once before sound came. I thought if everyone accepted the simple version, the family could survive. Your father was overwhelmed. Melissa was little. The hospital made everything confusing. I asked, everyone? She looked down. That was as close as she came to telling the truth. I did not invite her inside. I did not list the birthdays. I did not bring up the photo by the maple tree, or the fever, or the way she said my name like an item misplaced in the house. I had already carried those things long enough. I was not going to arrange them for her one more time. I am not going back to the old role, I said. You do not get to call me when you need a signature and call me a mistake when you need distance. Her eyes filled. I did not move toward her. I am still your mother, she whispered. I know, I said. That is why it hurt. That was the one sentence I allowed myself. She asked what I wanted. I told her the truth. Any contact would be by text. No surprise visits. No family meetings arranged around me. No updates about my body through her. No more using the words real family with me, unless she was ready to tell the whole truth in the same breath. She said those rules were cold. I said, they are clear. She left a few minutes later. I watched her walk to the car. She moved slowly, but I did not mistake slowness for change. Some people look softer when they are losing control. That does not mean they have learned tenderness. After she drove away, I made tea and opened Aunt May's blue box. The newborn photo was still on top. I looked at that baby for a long time. Red face. Closed eyes. One fist near her mouth. No shame. No story yet. Just a child waiting for adults to be decent. I placed the corrected newborn record under the photo. Then I added a copy of the match form. The pages did not belong in a folder anymore. They belonged with the proof Aunt May had saved, before I knew I would need saving. At the bottom of the box, I found the birthday card she had written years ago. You are not extra. The fold was soft from being carried in my wallet. I put it on top. Then I closed the lid. For the first time, the box felt finished. I did continue the testing process. I will not turn that part into a medal for myself. What I chose about my body stayed between me, my doctor, the hospital, and Melissa. That was the point. Help given under pressure is not love. Help chosen freely can still have boundaries. Melissa and I talk now, but not every day. Sometimes we talk about appointments. Sometimes we talk about weather, which is what people discuss when they are trying to build a bridge, without pretending there was never a river. She has apologized more than once. I have accepted the apologies that came with changed behavior. I have not accepted the ones that only wanted the room to feel better. My mother sends texts on holidays. I answer some. I ignore others. She has not used the phrase, real family comes first. With me again. Good. Some doors do not need to slam. They only need to close, and stay closed. I used to think family meant the people who could explain where you came from. Now I think family is the person who keeps proof of you when everyone else benefits from losing it. Family is the aunt who saves a blue box. Family is the sister who says your name correctly when it costs her something. Family is not the person who makes you stand outside the circle until your body becomes useful. That was never family. That was access. That's my story. 31 years. One blue box. One gray folder. One uncapped black pen. One sentence my mother thought would make me small. One hospital record with my name still on it. If you have ever been treated like a spare part in your own family, I want you to hear this clearly. You do not have to become useful to become worthy. You do not have to bleed, sign, give, bend, or disappear to earn a place that should have been honest from the beginning. Share this story with someone who needs permission to set the boundary they keep delaying. Comment what you would have done at that table. And subscribe for more stories about quiet truth, late courage, and the kind of dignity no one can take once you stop handing it back.